Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Siaka Massaquoi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, what's going on, Jackson? Thank you for having me, buddy.
It is a pleasure. Start at the beginning. How did you get into acting in Hollywood?
Well, how did I get going? I was in college at the University of Iowa, and I kind of fell into it. I was going to be a history teacher. I was taking history classes and stuff, and I got a little bored of just all these books with no pictures in them. I was like, man, I got to read all these books. Let me do something that's going to just kind of be a little easier. And so I looked into the theater department because I had fun doing that in early years of college, that were your prereqs and stuff. And I found this class called Black Action Theater. And I actually thought it was going to be watching like a bunch of action movies starring black actors, right? So like Blade 1 and 2,
Yeah,
Action Jackson, stuff like that, Shaft. And lo and behold, when I went in there, it was completely different than what I thought. It actually was. It was pretty intense. Like we had to read plays and write scenes and direct our own scenes and act in different people's scenes and do all this. And that's when it hit me, man, because it was the first time I've done anything, including like football and wrestling and school, where I actually enjoyed the process as much as the finished product. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, oh man, I think I want to be an actor. And I remember this, me and a good friend of mine who was in the class together. We were at a bar and having some beers the day before class again, and we kind of both were kind of nervously down. And I'm like, "Yo, I think I wanted to tell my mom I want to be a theater major." And he goes, "I think I want to tell my parents the same thing." And we're like, "Oh, okay, we're in it together. Let's do this." And so once I made that decision, I just went all in. And I'm the kind of person who, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to try to do it at like the level that is the top of the level,
100%.
right?
Yeah,
So I was it was between LA and New York. I visited New York that summer, and I said I couldn't do New York because the bars never closed, and I was like, I was still struggling with alcohol. I was like, that's not going to help.
yeah,
So yeah, so I went out to LA, took the shot, and I actually just, like I said before, in college, I fell in love with the whole process and the finished product. So when I went to LA, I just got going. I just hit the ground running. I found an agent pretty quickly. I still kept doing plays, which, as a recommendation, plays aren't the best thing to do in LA because no one sees them. But
right.
for me, it was to keep my skills sharp. And yeah, then I started going. Like now, I have my struggles because I was still drinking. By God willing, I've hit 9 years sober now. But once I was kind of going up and down. But 2016, when I got sober, when I really held on to it, by the grace of the Lord, everything changed, and my career just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. What was it like as you arrived in Hollywood? You kind of moved everything. You've put all into this to this
Yeah.
play. What happened?
Well, I was 24. It was super exciting, right? I was there with my best friend from college, and
Yeah.
you got two young guys, and to be honest, we were very fortunate. We got to early on fall into some exclusive crowds, and we were at parties we probably didn't earn our way to from a career standpoint. And it was a wild ride, man. But the best thing is I had my buddy with me, so it can keep me somewhat grounded with a lot of the things that was going on. I jumped in. I started doing the whole restaurant game, being a server, and eventually being a bartender, and running around trying to figure out life. But going to auditions and seeing how that worked, and just kind of playing a game. You just kind of, the thing about LA, and the thing I found out about the acting game, once you get going, it just becomes like second nature. You're just like the hustle during the day for the parts and the audition, and then the evening you go and work at the night bar with the night restaurant or bar situation where you end up hating it because it's like that's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
But it was just it things were just happening, sometimes seem to be happening so fast. I couldn't tell you I had time to really stop and think until like I was forced to stop and think. But it was exciting for what it was, and thank God that I didn't end up completely hurting my options or myself. But it was definitely a wild ride. It was definitely a wild ride. Yeah.
Yeah. How much of that is the culture of the city of LA versus the culture of like the actors, the influencers, celebrities in LA? Is it they're kind of two different worlds there?
Yeah, yes and no, right? Because I think because you're in LA, you're so close yet so far away. There were multiple times where one of the first jobs I had at catering, I get there and I worked at this a venue called the Design House, right? And I was catering there. And the first part I ever went to, I saw maybe all the biggest stars you can ever think of, from Nicole Kidman to what's her name, Alicia Keys, to John Stamos, to Bob Saget. I'm sitting there right there next to these guys, but I'm serving them drinks, and I'm serving
Yeah,
them, food, and it's like, so you're right there. So it's so like you feel like you're that's probably one of the traps, because you can get so close. You feel like you're almost there. You feel
right.
like it just takes that one thing, when at the, end of the day, one of the statements that was always said was, you had a 10-year big break of coming out of nowhere, right? You're in there for 10 years, you hit something, all of a sudden you came out of nowhere and you're like, no, I've been struggling for 10 years.
Yeah,
And that's pretty much what happened to me. But so the separation is clear. It's clearly there when you're looking at your finances, where you live, all that. But because you can kind of be in this world close by, when you're working in the restaurant or the nightclub industry, you start rubbing shoulders with people who are, on TV shows that you watch currently, and they're people just like you. And if you have a decent personality, you get along with each other, you start chatting, you start, kind of becoming that night out friends. But when it comes down to certain opportunities, we'll get into that a little later. They don't present themselves in the same way, because you may know somebody,
yeah,
where I think in other businesses, like if your father works at a law firm, all you have to do is, or the best thing you can do is go to law school, and then you have an opportunity to start where he is,
yeah,
and you can build from there. Where yeah, if you go to theater school, you go out there and then you hang out with some of these guys, you may or may not be able to start out where they are on set with them. No, you gotta continue to chop away, and hopefully an opportunity opens up and you can start building your own career.
yeah. Chris Pratt talks about he had this moment where he saw an actress and he was some sort of waiter and he ran across the street and basically pleaded to get an audition and she accepted it. Did you ever have something like that?
Um, Now with an actress, I've had a couple of, and this will get into more of the darker side of Hollywood. I've had a couple of offers to hang out with certain people, in ways that weren't didn't align with who I don't align with who I am and my values. And I knew that if I had taken that opportunity, that I may have been allowed then to go on different shows or different casting rooms, just
Yeah,
because I said yes to, and unfortunately, or whatever the situation may be, they're all guys who are offering me this. So I'm like, yeah, no, I don't do that. So, from that situation, that's what it was. But like I said before, I became friends with James Marston, who played Cyclops on the X-Men movies. And we went to a friend's birthday party, and I'm partying at this house with Courtney Cox's house, and we're having a blast, and I'm around all these people that I've like used to watch on TV or still do. And yet it's not really, it didn't really manifest into anything more than just an evening of partying. And you're just like, oh man, did I miss an opportunity, or should I have, like you said, begged more? I don't know.
right.
So I think that's the one thing about acting, like it can be different paths for different people to get to the exact same place. And if Chris is able to do that, that's fantastic. But I know the opportunities that were offered to me in that sense would have came with strings that I wasn't, willing to tie to myself.
Yeah. What made Hollywood so great? And back, we'll say 20 years ago, it's kind of lost its flavor at this point, but what made it so great?
the the chance, the opportunity, the ability to get yourself in a awesome situation, and honestly, just to be around some of these people, to be around some
Yeah.
of the, and don't get me wrong, when I was around some of these people, they were breaking down some very interesting, cool knowledge to me about what was up. So the fact that they were able to share their wisdom, some of the older cats, I never forget. I had a chance at this one bar to I sat next to Benicio del Toro, and one of the he was super cool, super
Yeah.
chill, and we're just kind of talking about life, and he's just like, yeah, just keep, keep the craft is what's going to matter. Keep going forward with the craft, like all this other stuff. At the same time, there's a pool by the bar, and Leo DiCaprio's over there hanging out with all these girls, and Benicio's over here talking. Leo comes up and he comes to talk to him, and he kind of like turns his back to me, even though we're clearly talking. And I kind of say something to him. Leo's like, "Oh, okay, whatever," and leaves. And Benicio's like, "Nah, what's up?" And then we continued talking. He continued kind of dropping knowledge towards me. So, that those opportunities, that's what made it cool. Like I said earlier, my best friend was there with me, so he worked at Equinox, and he got connected with a lot of owners and managers of places. So we got to go into, I remember this place called La Passage, which was Ashton Kutcher's bar at the time, and this guy was the manager. And for my buddy's birthday one year, we got to go there, and like we were treated like kings. And it was, these guys who are making minimum wage, paying like $400 for this crappy apartment in Koreatown in the valley, or sorry, in the valley. And we're able to be here, and those things will kind of happen. You can stumble into some really awesome moments and partying, and experience having some great experiences with some really cool people at the same time. You may not be there at their level, but like I felt like 2004 to about 2013, those opportunities could really just come out of nowhere. And if you kept your head on right, you could have some amazing times, like I said, going to Courtney Cox's house, and just all of a sudden I'm here doing this. And it was a really chill, cool time. And everyone there was awesome. So that was it, to have that awesome experience at that high level. I think that's what made it cool. And you felt like this drive for creativity and spark and hope that before I left LA, it started to wane. It started to get gray there. It started to get to a place where people were afraid of taking a shot, taking a chance because they didn't want to lose out on the little things that they were already holding on to, white knuckling. So that was a big difference that I noticed. It seemed like there was more hope and future back in '04.
Yeah. What would you say is the current state of Hollywood now?
Uh, Gray. Um, Unfortunately, with all the superhero movies, but also the sequels to remakes to prequels, I think that the biggest thing is they're ideologically driven. And in that, it's hard to tell a story. It's hard to tell creative stories when you have
Yeah.
to make sure you have the right amount of black, Asian, trans, uh, Polynesian individuals in your story, or as opposed to just telling the story and see where it falls. I think creativity has really been stifled in Hollywood. That was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to move out there, because I could express myself in ways that I thought, like being in the Midwest, I couldn't be understood. And eventually, as I was, I started aligning myself more with like the right, excuse me, the right and Republican way of thinking, and conservative, specifically conservative way of living. I saw that if I expressed that, then I would lose everything that I worked for, or I'd lose any of those opportunities. So I started to stifle myself or censor myself in a certain way. And I think as an artist, you can't have that. You really can't. It doesn't allow you to flourish. It doesn't allow you to create good art. And that we're seeing that right now. We're seeing terrible art out there. And it's a sad thing for Hollywood, but I think it's a great thing for the rest of the country.
Yeah, and you link that terrible art just to, this ideological driven as opposed to creativity and, mastery driven, um, style of artwork or pursuit that's happening right now.
Yeah.
Where do you kinda link that DEI, as we'll call it, back to?
Well, it was always kind of there underneath, because like everyone was always arguing like it wasn't enough opportunity. But then when they started doing, like, I'd say in Hollywood, they started where they require SAG required productions to have like at least one person of color and a female as within their casting. So it started shifting, and it was force feeding. Yeah, it was force feeding, what it was supposed to be. I mean, by the time people saw Oscars saying have to have a category where at least somebody's in there, the union had been requiring productions to do that for at least a good 4 to 5 years before that. So when that started rolling into place, yes, a lot more people got different opportunities, but I think it's still, again, it started to stifle what it is, that the artist should be about. And it just, I think inherently the way Hollywood works, as opposed to just storytelling, is that it's built on the flesh, right? And anyone who's a Christian or religious, you understand that, like, we're supposed to die to our flesh every day, but yet we're in an industry where it's like, for guys, like, how good looking, or do you have your six pack abs? For women, what's your breast size? Are you good enough? And then, so a lot of times that can go further to get to a higher level. What are you willing to compromise within your body in order to
Yeah.
continue moving forward? So it's always been underlined there. It just, I think, started coming out even more forcefully when they went towards that DEI initiative before it was called DEI. It was just, you have to do this. Why? Because it's opportunity and it's fair for everyone else.
Yeah.
I think it really hurt where Hollywood could be today.
Yeah. Did you notice a tipping point where it was like, this is suddenly becoming a lot more mainstream to have this, you must have a BIPOC person on cast on the set?
Um, I don't know if I noticed one moment, as opposed to, again, I think that after Trump was elected in 2016, everyone, a lot, not everyone, a lot of people in the industry seem to be like, we have to work harder to fight against what we believe is this, like, uh straight white man, possible Christian. We'll just toss Christian in there because they've been hating Christ for a long time,
Yeah.
type of mentality. And you didn't see it on set as much, but you kind of felt it in the air around you. You kind of felt it in, little things that would be dropped in conversations. And so you felt like, again, that was the underlining thing. When Trump was in there, I think people, as a lot of the artists there, felt like they were fighting something back more than they were before Trump got in. Because when it was before that, it was Obama. And
Yeah.
Obama was like, they felt the energy around was like, hey, everything, we finally hit that mark. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Trump's here. We got to fight harder. So the idea of having to fight harder really got turned up, I would say, during that time. And the way they know how to fight, kind of, it leads into the ideologically driven mindset of DEI and equity, and all that stuff. So it got really,
Ugly.
yeah, it got really
Yeah.
ugly.
Did you ever notice that coming at yourself? You are a black guy in Hollywood. Did you ever notice you were getting more attention or maybe more roles because you were a black guy?
No, because I would say before 2016, I was kind of in and out of taking the craft as seriously as I should.
Okay.
And once I started taking, it was this on camera class. Once I started doing that, I saw my skill set hit a level where I became undeniable. I could tell when I booked a role. Like, it was something where I go to audition, I do the audition, and I could feel like, yep, at the very least I'm getting a call back. If not, I'm booking the role. I do believe that that's what changed, where yes, they wanted to have more people in there, but for me and working more, I had to do the work more. So
Yeah.
once I started adding in that work more to my and that practice into my skill sets, I saw my opportunities open up more because I was doing it. Like,
You were being
if
better. Yeah.
yeah, and it felt different than before 2016. Really, I could literally feel myself moving in a better space. So, and I never really moved like that. I know a lot of people who did move, like, part of the black this or the female this or the Asian that, like, people who, I never moved in that space like that. I
Right.
always kind of kept myself like, I'm me. I'm going to rise to the level that I can work towards. Not, I'm me. Let me make sure I'm black guy. Let me make sure I'm around all bunch of black folks and do all the black stuff, or black agencies that make sure you get that chance to get. No, it was,
Yeah.
you know, just working for the skill set, sharpening my skills so I can be prepared for longevity.
Yeah, but you never noticed anything like, "I don't think I got that role," and then you did get a call back and they're like, "Look, we need." I would assume they never tell you, "We need a
No,
black guy in this
no,
film," but you
no.
never saw anything like that?
No, not personally. Not for the roles that I was going out for, because the roles that I was getting on TV and commercials and film, they were specifically, asking for a black man. But in the story, it didn't seem like it was forced, and that's
Yeah.
something you can tell. You can
Yeah.
tell where it's like for example, if they say something where like the black guy has to say like, "Well, racism," some like racism has held me back all day. I never really got those roles, and
Yeah.
that's the you can tell where it's like they're in there to tell America that they suck and that they're racist. And I'm like, thank God I never got those roles.
Yeah. Talking about that corruption in Hollywood, did you see levels of saturation that kind of started at the top? You mentioned you talked to Benicio del Toro, to the guy who played Cyclops, and did you see more saturation there of this corruption and kind of woke mindset, we'll call it, than you did lower down, or was it kind of fully saturated through just as part of
Um,
being in LA?
well, so the thing I saw first in LA was like the idea to compromise yourself. I saw females, compromise themselves early on in the game. I actually even saw one friend of mine who we catered together with also compromise himself, for males. And when we ran into each other, he was really embarrassed by it. So the
Yeah.
ability to compromise yourself, I think, was something that led the way first because when you're in Hollywood, like I said, you're so close, yet so far away. You have, you know, you could be struggling as a bartender for another 3, 4, 5 years, or you can move into this world like this. And so that's what you saw more. Again, it wasn't until SAG started to push, we got to have this thing in there where people now felt there's a few that felt like we deserve this place now because SAG said so. Not
Right.
it wasn't the thing that happened right off the bat. Like, yeah, there's some people who, yeah, they want to see a black dude. Okay, that's what they're gonna want to see, but it
Right.
didn't come off initially as that. It came off more initially like, are you one of us? Are you gonna move the way we want you to move in all things? Like that kind of whisper and that kind of nudge nudge. And most of the time those things were very deviant,
Fleshly.
if you will. Yeah, very
Yeah.
fleshly. Whether
Why do you
it's
think
drugs,
Hollywood
alcohol, or sexual, like all that.
Yeah. Why do you think Hollywood is that way? What's the original groundwork that was laid that means that
Well,
Hollywood is the way that it
the ri-
is?
yeah, a lot of people don't know the original groundwork. Hollywood set up to tell the gospels, to spread the gospels, and so
Oh, really?
yeah, like for example, remember Gone with the Wind, that line, like, frankly, Scarlet, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it had to be okay. That line had to be okay by a board that was a decency board that had to go through and go, okay, yes, no, maybe so, for certain parts, certain way that they
Yeah.
would express themselves. I think, like anything else, a few things happen. One, Christians start to advocate their positions, which we've seen in school, we've seen in government, we've seen in business. And two, and second part is that a big money got in, especially global money, where you're bringing in different cultures, and not all cultures are the same. Yes, all people are the same, but culture is different. And
Mhm.
I think when you start to allow that in order to make that money over to a place like China or Europe or what have you, you start to compromise what it's supposed to be. We started to like, unfortunately, even though it was fun, the early 70s with the love is love movement, when it started, or the free love movement, I should say, and it started pushing the envelope for what sexual things you could bring into the society. And so once you started seeing more of that, values and boundaries started getting lessened and lessened. While that's happening now, 80s come along. Now it's more hyper violent, big muscle men, which was like super pro America.
Mhm.
But there was also the drug game. Drugs getting involved in there. It changes everything else. So as Christians advocated the space, and yes, there are some still in there today, but they keep themselves quiet compared to where it was earlier in Hollywood's creation. The more it happens, it doesn't matter if it's Hollywood, it doesn't matter if it's business, it doesn't matter if it's schooling. You're going to see it start to devalue and fall to a level of indecency that moves away from its original intent and actually loses its shine. But
Yeah.
I like I said, I really do think there is good that has come because of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and it feels like that the one of the reasons why Hollywood fell so much faster than the rest of America is because the amount of power and money that was there. It tends to be an accelerator of what's actually happening in the
W-
culture, and the fact that
Well,
the Christians left and then all this money came in, it just kind of moved things along at a quicker pace.
Well, it also fell because like in business, it can be hidden because not everyone's watching what, like, the law firm across your street is doing, right?
Yeah,
Hollywood's actually the mouthpiece of the culture a lot of times.
yeah,
And after a while, people are going to get turned off by seeing this thing over and over. And I believe it still took a long time, because we've seen is only this last election that people started getting sick of hearing what
the Hollywood,
Hollywood
yeah,
actors, would think about who you should vote for. Even with the Me Too movement, you started seeing this stuff, but like, how did it affect average people? Average people are like, I'm not going through this, but then a lot of average women are going, oh yeah, that's me too. I'm just like Angelina Jolie that, did this, or Gwyneth Paltrow that did this with Harvey Weinstein. It's like, wait a minute, no, that's not how it works. And so they had so much control. And again, I think the further down it goes, it because Hollywood is such a mouthpiece for the culture, the quicker or slower the culture then can back away, because a lot of the
yeah,
woke stuff has been trickling in since the 90s, or I mean for a long time, since the 70s, but it wasn't so overt. But once they got their pride got even more into it, and they got like, you should listen to us, we're kings and queens or dukes and earls or whatever. I think now, as people were struggling and seeing that, man, my pocketbook sucks, my real life isn't like this, advent of social media actually was one thing that helped, because you got to actually see other people's real lives. You realize, wait a minute, these people aren't us. They're not speaking like us. They don't know our struggles, because they're quarantined in a mansion in the hills, while I'm sitting here losing my senior year of high school, and like I'm depressed.
yeah.
So I think that the fact that we got to see more of them was what actually had the fall happen fast in this generation, because saw more of them, where before we didn't see as much of them.
Yeah. You talk about Hollywood as the mouthpiece of the culture. How much do you think that shifted with the rise of social media, specifically X, after it was uncensored?
I mean, that would have to be probably one of the biggest parts of the fall of Hollywood, if you will, because I think in storytelling, authenticity is the key. And
Yeah,
when you start now seeing, even people like yourself saying, "Hey, I want to do a podcast and kind of talk and have interesting conversations," now you have your Tim Pools, your Charlie Kirks, and your so on, are able to come into your home as same amount at the time as these plastic movies.
right.
People, the human nature is going to turn towards authenticity more times than not, right? Not everyone, and you have to get through some conditioning, but ultimately people get to a place where they're like, you know what, this isn't, I want more. And what these people are saying are starting to ring more true to my everyday life than this, what they're saying over here, where they have $100 million budget. They get everything paid for on set. So they're not really worrying about the same things I'm worried about. But then when you hear over here people speaking to what they're seeing, gas prices suck, food prices suck. Um, I really think that that's what you saw, that big shift. I can get, and also I can be entertained by the average person who's doing something fun with their families. This on YouTube, my young godsons watch Ninja Kids, and they get like 15 to 20 million views for one
Nuts.
video every month. You're like, what's going
Yeah,
on? And they've gotten better at production, but if you watch some early videos, it's not Marvel CGI. It's just people being authentic, and that's what people want. That's ultimately what families and individuals starve to be together. And once you start seeing authenticity, the fake stuff becoming less and less and less like wanted and viable for those people.
yeah, and I'm sure one of the reasons that things like Joe Rogan have been
Yep.
so successful at actually in invading the lives of people is because it feels more authentic
Mhm.
and less shiny. And
Yes.
because of that less shininess, you're not distracted by how good everything looks. You're actually just having to come face to face with the ideas, which means you have to critically think about what's happening.
Right.
You have to actually go through in your mind, okay, well, if that's true, then we lead down to this road.
Right.
And as that kind of thing rises, Hollywood, which is pushing a worldview that looks super sparkly, right? You kind of don't notice the worldview because everything is put together so well, becomes less and less interesting because you can get you can create your own worldview, but you actually have to think about it. And
Yeah.
when you create something yourself, it is more yours than when it is forced upon you.
Right. And then when you're sitting back too, and after a while, I think like my generation and generation right before below me started to then starve only for the shiny.
Yeah,
And it's not real. It doesn't last. You look at things that actually really matter. My relationship with my wife, like, yeah, it's amazing. It's the best relationship I've ever had, but there are times where it's like rough, and rough and
Right,
tumble. And Hollywood just says happily ever after all the time and sparkly shiny, and it's like, yeah, that's not reality. And so I think
right.
people, even with good stories that have a good ending, they still want that hint of reality, that core of human goodness. And I think that on the other side, Hollywood started, the other thing they started doing, as I just thought about it, is they started to uplift the villain. They started to get to a place where the villain wasn't really a bad guy, just had a bad situation and
Misunderstood.
misunderstood.
Yeah.
And when you started to see that, then the lines of cultural morality started to shift to so much more gray that you start to lose people after a while. Like, I got into comic books, and I've used to love Marvel because the hero was the hero,
Mhm.
not because the bad guy, oh, he got his face burned, now he's wearing a mask. I'm like, he still killed like a whole town. Like, like, let's talk about that. The Joker, not poor Joker and do a sing-along like they did now. It's like, that dude is a psychopath. Like,
Yeah.
he needs to be stopped. So I think once they started to kind of woe to the villain, he never had that thing that we were striving for, which is ultimately to be better than who we are today every time moving forward. I think that's what stories are supposed to do. They're supposed to be the hyper example of reality so that you can go towards the good as opposed to the bad. Not like the bad is kind of like the good. And so either way you choose, hey, it is what it is. No, no, it should be clear, because the real effects with that is could be a lot of trouble in these young minds' lives.
Yeah, that's, one of the reasons I actually really loved the latest Puss in Boots movie,
Yeah.
was the villain was just death. Like,
Yeah.
it's just straight up, there's no this, that, or the other thing. It's
Yeah.
not misunderstood. It's just pure evil darkness. And there's been some other great movies. Interestingly, the first Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix had that kind of, this is just a psychopath. This is the embodiment of just
Crazy.
psychopathic evil and villainy,
Mhm.
right? And then the second movie, which I didn't watch,
Me neither.
from from what I heard, kind of tore that apart. It felt like a little bit that the first one was too powerful and too real, and so they had to kind of dumb down the second one, otherwise, because it was part of people actually being like, "Hey, that is actually what I'm like, and I relate to this person on a deeper level."
Well, you bring up the Joker. Like, look at Heath Ledger's Joker, and
Incredible.
right, it was incredible. And I don't know if you remember that line when Bruce Wayne asked Alfred, like, "Why does he doing this?" He goes, "Sir, sometimes people just want to watch the world burn,"
Yeah,
and that was such a boom line that everything else he did before that line and after that line was just like, yeah, it was a great performance, but you're just like, this is a bad, sick dude, and that was it. Like,
right.
you didn't have to try to like warm him up in any way and be like, well, think about it when he was a kid. Like, no, sometimes people just want to watch the world burn, and I think that's what makes compelling stories, where you have somebody who is just inherently bad and somebody who's inherently good, trying to get through their hurdles to do the good thing, right? Trying to get through their hurdles to stop the villain. I think, especially for young men, it's something we need to see so that when we're going through our struggles, we think about continue to get up and move forward, continue to do the next thing, because it's not the world's not over, and the moral gray that ambiguous field is actually will destroy us for what we're trying to do, which I believe should ultimately be a provider for your family in the long run. And there's going to be hurdles getting to a place where you're able to have a family and provide, and even when you are having a family and provide, and you can't be in this moral gray area of like, I'll just do it tomorrow, bills, who cares. It's like, no, the
Yeah.
good thing is to strive to make sure all your stuff's taken care of, to make sure you're the best example for your children, because stumbling blocks are going to happen. That
Yeah.
is life.
Yeah, and part of that authenticity is there are actually people who just wanna watch the world burn, like, in
Yeah.
real life, and
Oh yeah.
you may encounter them, and having like, the movies are just a heightened version of what's happening in reality, or
Right.
at least that's what they used to be, and knowing this is how, this force for good, even though it's somewhat dark and twisted, the Batman deals with the Joker is, it's, a wonderful inspiration for guys who are and
Yeah.
everyone who's going through similar things.
Well, and Batman, that's one of my favorite. Actually, you'll see right. You can see right here. Batman's right there.
Yeah, yeah,
He's one of my favorite comic book characters of all time because despite the issues,
yeah,
despite losing his parents, he still steps up and takes on evil.
right.
That inspiring mood, like Spider-Man over there, despite the fact that his uncle died and it was his fault. He goes, no, I still now great power comes great responsibility. Not great power comes, I'm gonna go get whatever I want.
Yeah,
And that's the fight. I think that's ultimately a fight against the fight the Bible talks about, which we're fighting our sinful nature. So we're
yeah,
always striving to be better. That's what these heroes and stories are supposed to invoke in us, not sit there and let us lean back on our sinful nature, because that's easy. That's
right.
something you can do any day. I don't have to teach my son how to like disobey. Like it's going to be in his DNA, even though he's a great like sweet kid. He'll like we were
Man is
late
born in
today
trouble.
because of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So to have those examples, I think it really can kick in and help us, and that's why it's important. The stories our country tells themselves is how the country will move, and we've seen our country move in certain direction because of stories that we've been fed and allowing ourselves to watch has really degraded our culture, and
yeah.
so we have to shift that.
Yeah, and think that's a huge point that a lot of people have been told from the movies that the reason they are what they are is because they've been misunderstood. They had a poor childhood, and that it's not their fault. It's
Not
not
their
their
fault.
responsibility. There's nothing they can do about it. Alex
Right.
Hormozy has this great quote that heroes and villains both go through the same evil. It's just what they decide to do with it. And the hero is the one who says, "I'm going to make sure there's no more of this in the world," and the villain says, "The world hurt me. I'm going to hurt it back."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I think having
That's great.
that
Wow.
juxtaposition there and realizing that like okay you want to be the hero, you want to be the Tony Stark, the Batman, the whoever it is,
Captain
you take
America.
the
Yeah.
you take the evil and then you turn it into something good. You force the world not to do that to the poor weak people
Yeah.
around you. I think that's the kind of thing that should inspire people and used to, but we haven't seen that in the movies anymore, which is sad.
Not in the same way. Not in the same way. But again, like I said, it's I do see it changing. Me
Yeah,
myself being involved in different types of media and different alternative storytelling that's, I would say, more conservative, if you will.
yeah,
That's the beautiful thing about this fall of Hollywood, is that the storytelling aspect is being dispersed from and decentralized from the coasts, where you have to have more of a certain ideology just to want to participate, and they're happening in Utah and Wyoming, they're happening in Texas and Tennessee, and they're happening in Kentucky, they're happening in Florida. So now we can get stories from all around the country, which we should
yeah.
have been doing. And with the advent of making production equipment that much easier, it allows for those stories to get out there and be more authentic and connect with people on a deeper level, as Hollywood used to do.
Yeah, and some of the greatest, films I've ever seen are, like, short films, I've found them on YouTube, and they're
Right,
for
right,
free, and
right.
they've got millions of views, and then there's
Yes.
comments of people like, I actually went through this kind of thing,"
Yeah.
or,
Or
"This
I
really
needed
helped
that
me in a
today.
dark
Yeah.
time." Yeah, yeah, exactly. The Diddy, tapes are potentially gonna come out here in the
Yeah.
next 4 years or so. How do you think that will affect Hollywood?
I think, if it's anything like the Weinstein tapes, I think it would destroy Hollywood. But, again, like a Hollywood being mounted on a lot of flesh, it needs to be. I
Yeah,
really think also, I mean, Diddy, I'll say like this because Diddy was a part of when I was in it was 2000, and he was a part of a vote or die campaign, right? And so he was really being pushed by the Democrats, and it was vote or die, and Diddy was leading that. I think that Hollywood has had a spell on our country and our culture for so long that, yes, why it may hurt Hollywood to a huge degree, it will help to break a lot of people's the spell that have been trapping a lot of people to just believe anything those people say on screen with a smile on their face and parties and champagne popping bottles and pouring all over chicks. Like that's ultimately not a good thing. And
right.
I'm looking forward to it because it can break that spell, the spell that's been on America for a while, and we need that spell broken, and we're seeing it happen. So the Diddy tapes need to come out, and it will save future generations from thinking, hey, at all costs, I need to have the shiny cars, the suits, the women.
Yeah.
the Andrew Tate lifestyle, if you will. Like it can get to a place where it people see, man, maybe that's not the best way to be. I'm let me look for heroes in different places, and they can
Yeah.
start looking back at fathers and local workers that are doing great things for their community.
Yeah. The only thing you can take with you is your soul. So it's best not to spoil that. And
I like that. I like that.
yeah,
That's good. That's good.
there's this fantastic passage from That Hideous Strength where Mark is reflecting in a prison cell at the NICE, and Lewis says, "All minor fears at Belbury, the NICE, for he knew now that all except the central leaders were always afraid, were only
Mm,
emanations from that central fear." That is kind of from an
mm.
outsider's perspective. I've never been to Hollywood. I've only seen it from the outside. That is what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Is that the kind of is that a fair assessment of what's
Yes.
happening?
Yes. People are scared. They're scared to death to push back against the status quo. I mean, I had a guy who was a mentor of mine who was a showrunner for two shows that helped shape the generation. And when his friend got in trouble, he's like kept quiet on because they said, "Oh, you'll never work again," or his support for Trump and conservatism. He kept quiet because he's afraid that he would never work again. And I thought to myself, wait a minute. One of the reasons I took this path as an actor was so I could build my own castle and not have to worry about being beholden to anyone because of my belief or my thought process, right? And I watched someone who had, in my eyes, hit the top of the mountain, but was too afraid to fall back down. So they're just going to leave in moments when you should speak, and a Christian, when you should speak, kept the mouth shut and there's a lot of actors. That's why Zachary Levi was seen as so brave, because he's one of the first ones to do that. Yeah, maybe later than I would have liked, but that's a different story. But you start to see, like, man, there is a level of fear that permeates throughout Hollywood that says you'll never again if you dare.
Yeah.
And again, I thought being an artist and an actor was daring to, push the envelope and go against the grain of whatever the culture is. And in Hollywood, the culture is a certain way, right? So if you go against that grain, no, the people are too afraid you'll never work again. And I think that's a lot of people, going back to early statement, that's how a lot of people compromise themselves, because they're afraid, oh, they're going to say something negative about me, or I'll never get an opportunity after if I don't take whatever this looks like today.
Yeah.
And next you know I mean, some of the stories, man, they
Not in great
compromise themselves.
situations.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
like this: when you see you can go back over the last 15, 20 years, and you see how self-destructive certain actors and actresses have been. I know for a fact it's because they compromise themselves in ways they shouldn't have, and they're trying to overcorrect, right? When they're sleeping with a
Mhm.
lot of women publicly, when they're drinking a lot in front of people, when they're throwing their body in front of you, it's because they're making up, trying to capture that thing that they compromised to get to that place. And I know this stuff firsthand. Like, I know this for a fact. So
Yeah.
it's see who has done this thing in their in their early 20s, by how they react to the world because of that. Like, oh, I have to sleep with everybody and show the world, look, see, I can get any girl I want. Watch, see, I'm a big man. You're
It
like,
was worth it. It was worth it.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
never
it was.
will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, you're right. You're 100% right.
Yeah. Going into 2020 and even 2016, what was your kind of outlook politically, also belief wise?
Well, so 2016, I was at a place where I had to get sober. I had to get back to recovery, and at the same time that happened, of course, President Trump was running for office, and I was disillusioned with Obama because I mean, in 2008, I made phone calls for him. I was always hope we can believe in, and all, or change we can believe in, hope, hope, hope.
Yeah.
Um, and and then 2016 hit, and I'm getting my mind right, I'm getting my body right, and I see this guy in Trump who's like saying things. And I never forget that first debate where he said, they're talking about the healthcare situation, and the left is always like healthcare for all, and the right's like, "Hey, we can't afford it, shut up." And so he's on there and he just says, the best thing we can do is put it on the free market and let the market decide. And I was like, uh-oh. I was like, they're going to kill him. I was like, he's coming with real solutions. They're going to try. I was like, I just like this guy because he's actually talking about real stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm putting my lot in with him because the most change candidate that I ever saw just did the same thing, if not doubled down and made rich people richer. And on the right, I didn't truly trust anyone there because the Bushes and what they did in the early 2000s. So when I saw Trump, I was like, at the very least, he's got his own money. At the very
Yeah,
least, he's going to do his own thing. Cool. I'm sick of these kind of plastic politicians.
yeah,
And so those 4 years are going on, and it was really fascinating and sad to watch people that I knew, people that I worked with, people I worked for, just seemingly lose
right.
center really violently in their minds. That reasonable conversation was gone. Like Trump, the thing that was happening, that's why I said like it was always underneath. But the thing, it was like the Manchurian candidate. Once they saw old, white, rich, straight man, it was over. Like
Yeah,
it was like click, it's like everyone clicked in, white guys, black guys, women, and it didn't matter. You're in Hollywood and you're liberal in that sense. It clicked. And it was so like, brother, I couldn't, it broke my heart with a lot of people because there's people
yeah,
that I looked up to. There's people that I admire for who they were and saw that this is all it took to break them and for them to fall in. And then you go into 2020 and COVID just added on to that sadness because then again, a lot of people I looked up to, a lot of people I respect the fact that they seemingly stood on their own 2 feet and you saw that they just ran with the lie so quickly. It just, it didn't matter what you said or what you did. It was really disheartening in that time. And it's funny because 2016 to 2020, it was like my best years as an actor. I was booking work left and right. I was only
yeah,
working as an actor, and yet at the same time, I'm looking around, being like, I can't be around these people,
right.
like on a personal level because they're crazy. They're losing
Yeah,
their mind and they're saying things about people I care about, people who've been like in my life and supporting me through my dark times. And now they're just painting this brush with everyone, but at the same time saying you can't paint this brush about me or
right.
about the people I'm around. And I'm like, how do you justify yourself?
Yeah,
I saw them also willing to truly saw that it was a death cult, the left and that ideology, because they were willing to bypass any good that Trump did for these marginalized groups. The First Step Act, for example,
mhm,
because it was him that did it. And so
yeah,
to me, I'm like, you rather people be stayed locked up than out because it was Trump? And ultimately, they're like, yeah. And you're like, wow. This one guy said to me, I go, so you're telling me Trump is worse than George Bush, whose administration lied about the weapons of mass destruction that killed millions of Iraqis and thousands of Americans? He said, yes. I was like, whoa. Like, man, I thought you had a decent moral compass.
yeah,
Death didn't matter to you. How I
right.
feel about the person mattered to him more. It messed with me, man. That it really messed with me.
Yeah. Did you
Really
ever
messed with me.
personally feel under fire, for kind of backing Trump?
Only in 2020 when I started going to the Beverly Hills rallies after during the summer of I'll quote it, summer of love, when that started coming out, and people were being murdered, black people,
Yep.
and the media was quiet about it. A 6-month-old was shot around the corner from where my mom lived in Chicago on the South
Wow.
Side during the day. Um,
Yeah.
and Hollywood elites they had a bail fund, including Kamala Harris, to get these people back out. I was like, what am I hiding from now?
Right.
To be around these people? And so I just kind of said, screw it. And I started getting, personally attacked online, not by a lot of people I knew, that they just disappeared from me. Right.
Right.
That was more of what I got disappeared. But what I would get were from random people who would try to say, do you still know you're black? And I'm like, what does that mean? And starting to
Yeah.
look deep into that ideology. And it means like support criminals and lawlessness and
Yeah.
broken families. And that's supposed to be cool. And I'm just like, no, I just kind of turned away from it. I'm like, I'm sick of it. This doesn't make sense or work. And so if you're gonna back away from me, I'm fine, man. Like you guys will see one day, and as we're seeing today and seeing what happened over the last 4 years, that unfortunately, I believe we were right, and they are, you know, they're gonna have to deal with that in their own way.
Yeah.
And I hope that they come to that light, but It is what it is.
Yeah, the BLM, the that Summer of Love, and the even Chicago today is just
Oh yeah.
it's a complete disaster. I'm sure you got your mother out of there,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
it is
I
it's
I told her to
crazy.
get out.
Yeah, they I think it was either Chicago or New York announced that there was the first time in like several 5 years or something that they had a week without a murder, and I was like, "That should not be a stat we're proud of." Like, surely this is something that,
It's probably
we'd
shit.
be
Yeah, it was
ashamed
probably
of.
New York, to be honest with you, because
Yeah,
Chicago was just wild. It's wild out there, and they
nuts.
push for it to continue to be wild too. It's especially what they've done with the illegals out there, and they're giving up Brandon Johnson with all the money that's been given over before that. Lightfoot with all the money they're giving over.
Yeah,
They again, I believe that they celebrate death and destruction. Like that's what they're about. Their policies lead to that. And some people just don't want to hear it no matter what. And it's sad. To
yeah,
me, it's what it looks like when you don't have Christ. You don't
right.
have Christ, you're gonna go towards death.
Yeah,
You
absolutely,
see it.
and it's also been sad seeing the degradation of Black culture. I
Oh,
talked to David Shannon from Cross Politic, who
yeah.
you may know about this,
Yep.
but, like, back 50 years ago, there's an interview actually that went viral, from back then that, of this guy being asked just on the street, like, "Hey, what do you think of white," this black guy being asked, "What do you think of white people?" And he's like, They're like us, but they're white." And then they asked a white guy, and they're like us, but they're black.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where the race wars are like they've been reawakened in a way
Yes.
that no one really wanted, and it feels like we're at odds, or at least the media would like us to be at odds with each other,
Yep.
which is such a strange thing to do. It's really sad to
Well,
see.
one thing I saw the stat somewhere. They were talking about during 9/11. That's when the people were together the most,
Yeah.
right? Right after that. But at the same time, the stock market and consumerism went down.
Hmm.
And they realized, wait a minute, separation and strife is what rises the stock market and rises consumerism. So
Interesting.
it's been a very if you look at it, it's been a clear push, whether it was Target doing all the LGBT stuff. So one group is going to buy, another group isn't. It actually created a parallel economy when you're talking about like place like Public Square, a lot of the Trump merchandise. I mean, even things like Daily Wire and PragerU, it created a whole new economic system because of separation.
Yeah.
And so I believe that they were going to keep pushing that harder and harder. And then it shifted into, well, we can control them completely because everyone wants to be a part of the group. Right.
Right.
And so, but what they missed out was what makes our country different than everywhere else is the middle class and the ability to still have, your own income. And by doing that, you can create your own space. And when you're able to create your own space in such a way, and the left is sitting there pushing, saying you have to do this, and if you don't, you just can't be a part of. Most people go, okay, and now you have Tulsi Gabbard and RFK in the Republican administration. Everyone's like, what? Yeah, they used to be Democrat. You have Joe Rogan, who is a California liberal, and
Yeah.
now is in Texas talking to Elon Musk, being like, man, these Democrats are crazy. It's
Yeah.
like, look what happens if we didn't have that space, and they tried, from the RRS to policies, Obama administration, they tried to ultimately shut everyone down. But the beautiful thing about our country is the fact that we still have that income in order to shift over to another space. And I think that it's something that is very amazing to watch. And I think there's greater things to come from it.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about that kind of 2020 wake up process that you went through.
Mhm.
How did that happen? How did that go about?
So so my best friend and I, we were living together, and him and his wife had just separated, and he moved in with me and him and his sons. And one day we were talking about he's like, man, people aren't paying attention. He's an Alex Jones guy. And at the time I was more just a Tim Pool guy.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, people aren't doing enough, man. They're coming, they're gonna cheat, they're coming. And I'm watching Tim, and Tim at the time was a little more like
Centrist.
centrist, right? So
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I've seen videos and people are stepping up, man. I believe in the people. And we were arguing back and forth. And the next day he comes to me, goes, hey, do you want to go down to a recall event in Long Beach for Newsom? I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, we weren't
Yeah.
doing anything, and I was talking about people were doing stuff. So I'm like, I'm gonna go do stuff. So we started going and doing that. And that was pretty exciting. Then we went to Huntington Beach the next day, which, you hear a lot of stuff about Huntington Beach, and that was like oh man, that was a pretty big. I was actually debating against Black Lives Matter when I was there. I was like, oh wow, I've seen guys with American flags. Then the following weekend went down to the first Beverly Hills rally, and it was maybe 50, 60 people, and I got involved in that, and that started getting exciting and more turned up, and I'm talking to people from all walks of life who are like, yeah, they're espousing the same thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like, you know what, like I said before, when I was seeing them kill everybody over there in these different cities, I was like, screw this, I'm not going to hide anymore. And so then I started becoming more and more just a part of the movement, and a part of celebrating America, which we saw happening, because we saw people
Yeah.
from every. I mean, we saw Muslims and Israelis next to each other, being like USA, walking on the street together in Beverly Hills on Rodeo, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this is what the promise of America right there. And
Right.
they want to tell us no, it isn't. They want to tell us, like, you go in your group over here in your group, and you wait till we tell you what you should be like and what you should do. No, once I saw that, we just started going more and more. I did my first speech. I did my first speech actually in Long Beach at their recall a few weeks later, in front of like maybe 15 people. And then I followed up with that to do a speech at Huntington Beach in front of like 150 people. And it was just like, whoa. And then just started getting involved more and more uh, uh, in these rallies. It was such a beautiful thing and a beautiful time.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, you kind of wish that he would have won, so that we could like kind of finish that off
Yeah.
perfectly. But I actually think in the long run, and it's sad that we lost so many souls during this last 4 years, and and I'm even speaking of those trafficked up here, and we saw the biggest
Yeah.
migration of slaves in American history. But the fact that he didn't win, people got to see it. They got to it wasn't theoretical anymore. And so
Yeah.
when you choose not to believe it now you're just delusional,
Yeah.
and there's not really much you can do when someone's delusional.
Yeah. In those Beverly Hill rallies, who was kind of standing side by side with you? Was it other actors, or people, just general normal people?
Oh yeah, it was people from all walks of life, man. Like I remember one of the heights the weekend before. I'll give you an example. The weekend before the election, there was we got there, and people had set up booths and selling shirts. The guys were giving out, these guys it was like this Armenian guys were giving out free hot dogs. You had like a whole line of Jewish people and Dennis Prager, they're doing their dance, going back and forth over there. There was a live band. There was a plane flying overhead with a banner that says Vietnamese for Trump. I see like we see like
Wild.
cholos who had like their suits all buttoned up to the neck, being like, yo, I'm USA. And you saw like the homies from like Compton be like, yo, what's up, like bouncing their cars, being like, for Trump. The bikers would come running, driving by with their Trump like leather jackets on.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, this is, and then you saw your Beverly Hills suburban moms.
Yeah.
You saw everything. There were a couple actors that came up to me who were still wearing a mask, and they're like, I follow you, but I'm too afraid for my career. I was like, all right, it's fine. But you
Cowards.
saw so many, you saw so many different types of people, young, old, fat, skinny, black, white, everything in between that was there. It was, dude, it was something that the history books will write about
Remember.
fondly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was so beautiful, man. It was so, like, it was America. It is America. It was so, and actually the city tried to stop us by like putting up signs that said you couldn't even park in the area between these times on Saturdays. They covered up the Beverly Hills sign that was there at the mall in that little fountain because they didn't want to be recognized. The city tried everything to stop us from being there, which made people come out even more. And people were
Yeah.
driving in from Sacramento to San Diego every
Wow.
weekend to be a part of this thing. It was, dude, it was so next level. It was so next level.
That is awesome. How did
Yeah.
you get from there to, being in DC on January 6th?
Well, so January 6th was my third time in DC in probably 5 months. The first time I went was for a Blexit event.
Okay.
When Trump got sick with COVID and he came out and spoke to people, that was the first group of people, black and Hispanic. Oh man, the most racist guy. The first people he came out to speak to was that group. The second time I went was right after the first big Trump rally there, that people seen the footage of people getting beat up and everything.
Yeah.
And so I went for the second time. And that second time, like, it was super chill. I never felt safer. It was super fun. And then January 6th was coming, and with everything going on, to me it was like I want to be a part of history. I want to
Mhm.
see what's going to happen. And part of me thought, I'm like, you know what? This is happening so that everyone's going to have their own cameras, and
Right.
we're going to show the truth. So that was the biggest reason I went, was to be like, I wanted just to be a part of history, and honestly, I wanted to see how this was going to all shake out, like constitutionally. Like, wow, we're going to see, Ted Cruz I always forget the senator's name, but Josh Hawley. We're gonna fight the electors and present their case, and we're gonna actually see it. It was gonna be this amazing American moment where we got to see how the Constitution works when there's a dispute like this. Unbeknownst to me, um, the history that I was a part of and saw was, to me, the biggest entrapment that the U.S. government's ever done to its own people. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
What was your experience like on the day?
Well, early on in the day, it was super cold, so that sucked. And we went around. The friend I was with, we went around and we saw people were just in this great jovial mood, even though everything they saw everything was going on around them. People were in the great spirits. Went to the speech. After the speech, when we're told to patriotically and peacefully go have our voices heard, people start marching, and we're laughing with some people around us. And my friend and I were like, I'm like, I've been to rallies. I've been going to Beverly Hills rallies since June. Let's go back to the hotel because we're good. So we went back to the hotel, which was in the Freedom Plaza, Marriott across the street, from the Freedom Plaza. Went back and I was like, you know what? Let me see what the news media is saying about this. Like, people were sitting there singing hymns as we were leaving. I'm like, they're gonna say something bogus. So I turned on MSNBC, which was probably not the best bet. I turned it on, and the interviewer is like, "Well, it's a sad day. This is happening. That's happening. There's police sirens." I was like, "She's lying."
Yeah.
I'm gonna go put my shoes on. I'm gonna go find that reporter, stand behind her, and be that crazy dude behind her, and be like, "You lying?" And wear my MAGA hat, be like, "Yo, here's a black person." So I start walking down there, and there's a couple. It was meandering. It felt a lot like the second time I went. As I'm walking there, people walking back. I was like, "Oh, is it over? Did people leave?" They're like, "No, there's still people hanging out." I was like, "Okay." And so I head over there, and I'm just like, as I get closer, I start seeing more and more people. I'm like, "Whoa, this is pretty intense. Like, there's a lot
Yeah.
of people." And then as I get closer to where the scaffold is, where they had the American flag hanging over, there was I looked up and I remember seeing somebody on top of the roof with a Trump flag over. I was like, wow, how'd they get in there so fast? I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Um, and somebody recognized myself and another guy from Beverly Hills, and we started talking, and they wanted to interview us. So we did that. And right at the end of our interview, we started singing a national anthem. And so everyone starts singing it, and it was like, oh, that's cool. So then we start walking off the side of the scaffold steps to go more to closer to the Capitol. We get up there, and you can kind of smell pepper spray a little bit. You could tell it had been sprayed, and it's like, oh wow, okay. But people are just kind of hanging out. I look up, and there's cops standing on top of like this little kind of upper section, and the cops started pushing people down. I'm like, oh, and they start just indiscriminately spraying into the crowd. People were just standing around. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So I walk away from that, and then I get up some stairs to go to, I want to say it's the east side of the building. And as I'm walking around, I'm recording, and I get to the door, and I go, hey, I'm like, oh, this is where they're letting people in. And somebody's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. So we're kind of meandering in, like we're going to a football game or to a concert. And I'm holding the camera, and I get to the doorway, and they kind of stop us, but like it's just packed there. So cops are standing around. There's cops standing against the wall, just kind of hanging out. And so
Right.
I'm just recording. I'm putting my phone on. I'm like, well, they're not really letting us go through. So I'm just going to reach and like get as much as I can.
Yeah.
I talked to one cop to my left, and then to my right, a cop comes up in riot gear. He's like, I need you guys to go back that way now. And we're like, oh, okay. I was like, I turned back to him. I go, we're going to make it happen. We're being super reasonable.
Yeah.
I turn back around, and I turn to everybody. I go, guys, we got to go back the other way. Everyone turns and starts leaving. I walk around a little bit. I saw some other cops standing that I talked to. Then I turned and I left, and it wasn't a thing to me at the time. And I get back, my friend's like, "Oh, I was worried about you. The news said this." I was like, "Nah, it was fine. It wasn't a big deal." And then I fly back to LA, and days later, you start seeing raids happening to people, and January 6th, the worst day ever, and you're just like, whoa, this is what? I'm like, this
Yeah.
is pretty crazy. Why are they making a bait? And then I heard about Ashley Babbitt and I saw the footage. I'm like, oh snaps, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because you didn't see it, like no one. And by the time I got there, it was like an hour and a half after all that stuff had happened.
Mhm.
So when I got there and the cops were just hanging out, why would I ever think that people were being attacked and things were even crazy? Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't, you know. And
Right.
so yeah, it was pretty wild, man. After I got home, but like when I was there, it was chill. Like it was mostly chill, except for those cops pushing people and spraying them, who were
Yeah.
just kind of like they were being like unruly kids, like when somebody would hop up and be like, "Ha, I'm standing here," and the person pushed them and then sprayed them. You're like, "Whoa, bro, that's like pretty intense, man." Like the person was just being silly. But it's now the footage that I've seen over the last 4 years, I see how purposely aggravated that they try to make people.
Yeah.
It's like I said before, it was entrapment.
Yeah, absolutely. What was your experience like with the FBI coming after you
Oh,
and all of that?
well, so I thought because I was very vocal about doing what I've been doing and as an actor and posting online and not being afraid to say and who I was and where I was, I didn't think they would come after me like that. Um, they ended up raiding my house on June 10th of 2021. 15 agents, guns drawn, ARs pointed, and cuffing my best friend, two other roommates, to grab my godsons and pointing guns in my face. They took my computer, my cell phone, my hat, my flash drives. Still haven't gotten it returned, still to this day. Um, and they didn't even arrest me at the time, and they didn't charge me anything. They said it's just a search warrant, but they came with like everyone. The front street had
Yeah.
cars parked all there to make a big show of it. And I knew what it was for. It was to basically trash my name.
Mhm.
And I remember telling the FBI agent, I go, dude, I'm not a rich man, but I will fight to the death for my name.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, the LA Times and the New York Times, Chicago Tribune, the Daily Mail, everyone started writing Netflix actor rated, Netflix actor rated, Netflix. I'm just like, and that's what it was for. And
Yeah.
if anyone ever read the articles, you'll see, yeah, he was president January 6th. He's known for telling people to run for local office. I'm like, that's it?
What a horrible crime. How
Terrible
dare
crime.
you?
Shut up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and this, all that. And I was like, wow, these people are insane. And so I went all in then to doing more speeches. I met my wife that year of September of 21. And in 22, I was like, screw it. I decided to run for local office because like I've been telling other people and people have been like, yo, you inspired me. I'm running, or when are you going to do it? And I'm like, I'm just an actor. And I'm like, you know what? I can't keep telling people to do something I'm not willing to do myself.
Yeah.
So I ran for state assembly. I didn't win, but I then became vice chair of LAGOP, which was huge because I got a chance to see the workings of the party, to see the good, and to see why California GOP and a lot of GOP struggle around the country. Um, oh, my son's up.
No worries. If you need to go take care of that, go ahead.
Yeah, let me see him real quick. Hold on.
No worries.
This is Xavier.
Hello, Xavier.
Oh, he just woke up and needed Papa.
Obviously in deep distress.
Yeah, he's very deep. He's like, no one's with me. It's okay, buddy. I know. I know. It's okay. It's okay. This is the best stuff. This
Oh
is the
yeah.
best. This is what it's all about right here.
This improves the interview significantly.
Oh, little Zay. There you go. It's okay. Come here. It's okay. It's all right. You don't mind if we finish it up with him, do you?
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
So the FBI comes after you. Did they ever put you in prison, or was it just kind of, we're gonna take all
So
your stuff and deal with it?
at first that's all it was. They just came after. They just took my stuff, and then on November 30th of 2023, I just my wife was 7 months pregnant with this guy, and we were flying back from Tennessee to Burbank Airport to Los Angeles. And as we landed, as soon as and Burbank's a small airport, so you get off and you get on the tarmac. And as I put my foot on the tarmac, a female agent came in front of me and was like, Siaka Massaquoi. I'm like, yeah, they're like, you're coming with us. And two guys jumped on either side of me. And I'm like, what's going on? They're like, you know what's going on. I'm like, no, you tell me what's going on. They separated me from my wife right away, didn't allow us to talk to each other at all.
Wow.
They said the guy on my left was like kind of shaking, like he was like, like he's like waiting for something to happen. I go, look, man, look, guys, I'm pissed off that this is happening. I'm not going to do anything. There's four of you, there's
Right.
four cops over here. What do you think I'm going to do?
Right.
But I can be mad. I can be mad that this is happening this way. You didn't have to do this. You knew I was vice chair of LAGOP. I was running for local office. I've been living in the same place for almost 10 years. You know where I'm at. You could have easily have, set this up and I could have come in and talked to you guys.
Yeah.
I was like, but you guys wanted to do it like this. They're like, look, we're not trying to embarrass you. I'm like, you already just arrested me on the tarmac. Like, people were looking over like, well, who was this guy that I'm traveling with? Right.
Yeah.
You've already done it. And so, they came, and then that's when they did arrest me. They're like, well, I was like, well, what's the charges? They go, we'll tell you when you get to the jail.
That's always reassuring.
Yeah. And so at this point, I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if they're going to put that 1512 on me for a felony. And I'm like, I didn't really do anything. As we're driving there, I kept complaining about how I'm like, I know why you guys did it. It's like, you guys did this so you can have a headline. You didn't have to do it like this. This is terrible. This is crap. And the agent said, he goes, well, we didn't want you to be prepared. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, prepared for what? To do what? Like, I had like the only weapon I had with me was like a shotgun at the time, just in case I had intruders.
Right.
Like, what is the shotgun going to do against 15 agents if they really want to come into your house? You know what I mean? I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, my wife is pregnant. Like, you think I'm going to run? Like, what are you talking about? And so we get to the jail, and when we get there, the guy comes, sits down with the paperwork, and he shows me. He goes, it was almost embarrassing the way it felt like he was almost embarrassed to go, okay, we did all this because we're charging you with 4 misdemeanors. And I'm like, and I remember looking at him like, what?
Really?
And he's like, yeah, this is where I'm spending a night in jail because of this. I was like, are you guys serious? And I'm like, this is just, that's when I wouldn't say I shut off, but I really gave it to the Lord. I was like, okay, like they were going to try to do something regardless on what I was doing or who I really am. And that, to me, though, that was a great moment, that next 24 to 48 hours, because my wife, Charlotte, she was able to not be alone that whole night. We had friends coming picking us up from the airport. They stayed with her all night. That evening, the jailer gave me a Bible. So I was saying the Lord's Prayer. She came in and asked what I want to read. I got a Bible, and then I'm falling asleep with a Bible in my arms. The next day, when they took me over to the U.S. Marshals to book me there, we were like, the first room that I was in. That's all right, buddies. The first room I was in, as soon as I got into the cell, I dropped to my knees and I start praying.
Yeah.
My lawyer got there like right off the plane, and he's holding on to like still has a suitcase with him. He like just showed up, and we got to talk in the room, and and after we were done talking, like I fell to my knees, and I listen. I don't know if you know that Brandon Lake song, Gratitude, and it's like the lines like, so I throw up my hands and praise you again and again.
Yeah.
Because all I have is a hallelujah. I'm singing that song in the little holding cell.
Yeah.
Later on, I'm dressed still normal, and I was able to have like, hold on, Zay. I was able to have I had a shirt on that had Jesus saved on the back, and this like 6'2" white dude who has tatted all over his face, looked like he could be that white supremacist in jail, was like, hey man, nice shirt. And I was like, oh yeah. It's like, well, Jesus saved my life. And he goes, oh, I'm reading the Bible. And then we start talking about God and the Bible. There's 5 of us going to court at the time, and all 5, and then like the third guy jumped in. So 3 of us are starting to talk about the Lord. We get to our cell, and like, as we're all sitting there talking, and we're talking about, Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis and this and that and the other, we get to the holding cell at the jail, and before we get to go out, that big dude kind of bumps me. He goes, "Hey man, can you pray for us?" I was like, "Okay." So I was able to pray for the group of men in there while we were locked up, and I saw it. The Lord, I was the last one to go, and the Lord let me out. The Lord and the gates, fell open,
Yeah.
as we've seen in the Bible, and it was just like I saw it. I saw it happen. I saw then the doors just open out of nowhere. You think like you're done. You think you're locked up, and you hear the stories about the disciples. Like I think it was Peter who was in prison, and
Right.
all he did was worship, and they said that the doors swing open. They're swung open. And I'm like, I was in there being like, that's it. They're
Yeah.
they're trying to every other J6er was rested on Thursday or Friday so they could keep him in for the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And I was able to go home that Friday night to my wife, and we had people from my church showed up. We had people, the pastor that married my wife and I was there, like people from the LAGOP came and supported. It was just, it
Yeah.
was next level. I saw God work, and there's been multiple moments, but that one especially told me like, no one's gonna ever try to convince me the Lord isn't real because I saw Him work, and all I did was pray to Him. That's it. I didn't
Yeah.
sit there and like move a better way, or I just praised Him and prayed to Him, and He was like, okay. And that's what the Bible teaches us throughout the entire book. It's not what you do outside of praise that the Lord will respond. It's not if you're giving more to the homeless than anyone else, or
Yeah.
you've built the biggest house. Anyone know it's you praise Him. You
Right.
praise, you pray to Him, and He will hear you. And it's true. It's so true, man. It's so true. And
Yeah.
this guy's living proof of that.
Yeah. Was that moment in prison where you were not sure whether you're going to have to stay for much longer? Was that kind of the darkest point in this whole ordeal?
Um, no, because by that point I had God.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
21, I was still on my journey towards Christ. Like I had an understanding of God, that like God saved me in program and through my drinking, but I didn't have an understanding of Christ. And during 2020 and going to those rallies, I started meeting a lot more pastors and started digging deeper into Christ and who
Yeah.
He was for us. And so when they raided my house, that was the darkest moment because I felt like I was screaming into the wind about look what they're doing to
Right.
people like myself, and I didn't feel like I was getting the same response that humans should do when injustice is happening like that, especially the way I was raised, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like, the system is against black men, and it's like no one showed up,
Yeah.
from that side anyway. There were people that showed up that started to know from the rallies and stuff. But after that, when that happened to me, when I got arrested, man, the wagons circled. We had people set up my Gibson Go right away.
Yeah.
We had like again, people were there to stay with Charlotte, so she wasn't alone, spitting out as a 7-month pregnant woman. Um, People were there to support me the day of. My lawyer showed up and was able to get there right away right away to fly in from Florida. Like all these things happened where it was like God was like, "Look, I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you, I
Yeah.
got you."
Yeah.
So it couldn't be dark. It
Yeah.
really couldn't. But after the raid, that felt like a lot. That raid, because everyone, people that I used to know, were like, "Oh my goodness, you're a bad guy." They would try to reach out to my mom and interview her.
Yeah.
And I didn't want, I was worried about what she would think. But this time around, it was just like God wrapped His arms around me, man. It couldn't be dark at that time. It was like, okay, here we go. Let's fight this good fight, and I'm definitely not alone. The Lord has my back, and I felt that, man. More. I felt it more than any other time ever in my life, and so
Yeah.
it couldn't be dark. It really
Yeah.
could.
And praise God, all of the charges have been dropped. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
everything has worked out in the end. But
With
it did.
prejudice, so that
Yeah.
means you can't bring it back up later.
Heck yeah. It did feel like that whole January 6th thing was kind of the last ditch effort of the left, will say, to threaten people who disagreed with them,
Right,
with this is what we will do. This is our show of strength.
right,
And it was kind of from that point on, everyone is just kind of, no one really pays that much attention to the media anymore.
Yep.
People pay far less attention to the celebrities, the Hollywood actors and the big
Hmm.
singers and such. Partly because everyone they overreached, they went all in on January 6th,
Yep.
and God was kind and God was powerful, and he slowed their hand and made them fall into their own trap.
Oh
But
yeah.
it did feel like this was kind of their last, like, all right,
Well,
fine, we'll pull out all the stops. We're going to destroy your lives, because we're powerful. Look at
yeah.
us.
Well, I think it was twofold. It was they wanted to show power, but they were afraid. They were afraid of the people like you and me
Absolutely.
because that first Trump rally that showed up that I didn't go to had almost 1 million people show up.
Yeah,
And so they can't Joe Biden couldn't fill out a place that wasn't a graduation during his campaign. Think about that.
yeah,
Like he had to go to churches and graduations for it to look full.
yeah,
Like that tells us a lot where this guy Trump what his the things he was talking about and the values that he was espousing in the direction he was taking this country got people, random people who weren't making money during 2020 because everything was shut down to still find ways to show up for
oh, yeah,
what they believed in. That scared them to death. So they were going to January 6th was to take Trump out. And I think it was to for them to work under mass surveillance of Americans. It was them to start like the Quiet Skies list, which I was on, and get harassed before I was charged with anything.
yeah,
Was harassed for 2.5, 3 years by the air marshals.
yeah,
Followed safest flights I've probably ever been on, in case anyone, any terrorists want to do anything. But they had set this thing up so that we could be afraid, but they were going after Trump because they didn't want anyone outside of them to be able to galvanize people in such a way ever again.
yeah. I do think there's a tremendous amount of fear and fear generally leads to illogical things to do, things that you
Right.
do. And I think that not only the COVID, but also January 6th and even the last 4 years under Biden have kind of been
Hmm.
we realize we're losing our grip. We realize people are starting to wake up and say no. And so out of that fear, we're going to make illogical decisions, and we're going to have to overstretch our hand and do as much as we can, to bring people to silence people, because we realize that if we don't, this is kind of our last hope.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
it has been glorious to see all of their plans backfire and fail,
Yeah.
quite miserably.
So spectacularly. You gotta love it. Oh,
You
you
gotta
gotta
love
love
it.
it.
You gotta
Yeah.
love it.
And look, man, it's not over yet. There's things I don't know if you just saw recently. Trump said that the those pardons don't count. So we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah,
I think it's we have to there's a lot of things going on, and anything I'd say to those supporters watching is like I know we want to see things happen right away because they're back in power, but I think this is a process. You got to cleanse out the areas of certain judges,
yeah,
certain district attorneys. That's why they were fired the way they were. You got to get rid of some of them so that you can actually implement the plans you need to implement. So don't be surprised if going into the summer or probably tail end of summer or fall, you start seeing some big names come get in trouble. Don't be
yeah,
surprised.
yeah. It's in your ideal world surrounding this January 6th thing, what would you love to see happen?
First and foremost, I'd love to see those who were falsely persecuted to get restitution because there are people who lost some people took their lives, but there's people who lost their livelihoods and the opportunity
Yeah,
to provide for themselves and their family. There are people who their reputations were lost forever. There's people who went into bankruptcy trying to defend themselves.
right.
I mean, I myself still in debt 18 grand
Yeah,
because I wouldn't take a plea deal and because I wanted to fight all the way. I think that Xavier, sorry. I think that that's one of the first things. I think secondly, we need to have these people like Nancy Pelosi held accountable. She was the one, the Speaker of the House is who's in charge of all the security of the Capitol. And why did you have majority of the Capitol Police on the other side when you knew a huge amount of people were marching from the back of the Capitol, but yet you have majority of them facing someplace else? Like that to me is a
right.
setup. I think they need to find out all the agents that were there, and they told us, I think they tried to give a little small bit of bone to us by saying 23 informants. I know for a fact current working FBI agents were there. I know that for a fact.
Yep.
We need to find out who they were, and they need to be held accountable. Every elected official that went along with this needs to be held accountable. Go to jail. People need to go to jail. Like
Yeah.
that's just what it is. Because if it doesn't happen, it will it will happen again, and they will try to do it worse and try to do it better next time. So people need to go to jail for what they've done to the American people by entrapping us.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Kind of surrounding this, I'm curious to see how much Trump does by executive action and how much happens actually through Congress. And I know that the Republicans won the majority in Congress and the House. So I'm curious to see in the next 4 years how much is direct action from the president and how much is
Well,
the dissolution of the Democratic Party.
Well, I think that a lot of it will have to come from DOJ, FBI. I think that's where it's really going to have to come from.
Yep.
There's a few things he can do where, from a public standpoint, but from the legality standpoint, it has to come from the DOJ and FBI. FBI with their investigation, and DOJ with their charges. So I think that's going to be the big move, and I believe and hope that those that have been appointed have the guts to follow through.
Yeah. Going forward, what are you doing with Hollywood for Freedom, the Babylon Bee? You have a comedy channel you're working with as well.
Yeah, so we have with Hollywood for Freedom, we are an agency. Hold on, now my dogs are acting up. Hey, we we have it's a
It's a
full
party.
house here.
It's a
It's a
party.
party. We have Hollywood for Freedom. We are a Christian-led organization that started because we're being ostracized because of the jab in Hollywood and losing jobs. So we wanted to start a database where people can get together, and we can connect that database of, basically, I still believe, like, the Hollywood, the effort and the work and the training it takes to get in Hollywood and to hit the high levels is still at the height. We
Yeah.
need to now connect them with creators across the country who are doing work, and so that you can bridge the gap with the Hollywood level talent with creators outside of the state, so that we can end up doing great, beautiful projects. So anyone wants to join a database, if you're a writer, director, camera, music,
All of it. Yeah.
all of it, join us, hollywoodforfreedom.com.
Yeah.
With the Babylon Bee, I've been doing sketches with them, and we're probably going to do season 2 of California to Texas, so keep your fingers crossed on that. That was a
Yeah.
great one that everyone
That was
really loved.
fantastic.
I've been working with the Daily Wire as Black Jeremy recently, and so that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I got more projects coming up, more projects coming up in the pipeline. So we're looking forward to seeing that come, and to continue to raise the. I believe that the next move for us as conservatives is do what Jesus did and tell good stories to capture the heart, because that's
Absolutely.
what we're going to do to keep this from having to get back into a fight in our lifetime.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems with conservatives is we're really bad at telling stories and creating art. And so I
Yes.
look forward to Hollywood. Obviously, I know Hollywood from Freedom through Red Balloon, who I work for, and my dad, Andrew
Yeah, yeah,
Krapachetz.
yeah.
So it's been
Andrew's
fun
the
to watch you
man.
guys. He's awesome. He is a great dad as well as a great
Yeah,
guy.
there you go. You got a
So
lot more hair than he does, though, so that
I
works.
do. It's the bald is coming. I can feel
Oh,
it though. I can feel it.
hey, just go into it gracefully, brother. It's worth it.
Yeah. I've heard that it's great stuff.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. I'm about to shave later on today too myself, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
yeah, and you've got, your comedy I forget the name of it.
What the fact?
What the Fact? There you go.
What the fact is just comedy. You can find us on Rumble. Go check us out there on
Yeah,
Rumble.
yeah, and I think comedy is such a huge part of, recovering the kindred spirit that we kind of
Yep.
lost in COVID, is
Yep.
being able to laugh with other people, you guys are obviously clean, much cleaner than many of the
Oh yeah.
comedians, today, and so I look forward to
You
having
know what's funny?
non-blue comedy.
You know what's funny about that? We don't intend to be clean or not clean. We
Yeah,
just write that way. It's really
wanna be
interesting
funny.
how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we just tell the story, and that just happens to be what it is.
Yeah, and crass jokes are generally a cheap get out of jail
Yeah.
free card, and it's
Yeah.
real humor doesn't need it
Is
because
intelligent.
it's intelligent. It
Yeah.
requires creativity and all of that. So, Siaka, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes. Thank you for having
Last
me.
thing I always like to ask, given our conversation, what's the best piece of advice you would give to anyone watching?
Best piece of advice I would give is trust in Christ and stand for what you know is right. Don't back down for anyone.
Yeah. Being a coward never pays off in the long run.
Nope. And you trust me, you will regret it longer than that moment of uncomfortableness.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'll put all the links in the description. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, lots of fun. And you've got the party continuing
Yeah.
on over there.
Yeah, I gotta go. Gotta go take care and feed the dogs. So it's gonna be fun.
Have fun at it. There you go. See you
Thank you.
guys.